Hello everybody and welcome back to the Royal Blue Podcast. I'm Phil Kirkbride and today joined by Gav Buckland, Dave Prentice and Adam Jones as we chew the fat over all the major talking points at Goodison Park. And of course, there has been a managerial change on Thursday night around 7 o'clock. We got news that Marco Silva's 18-month reign as Blues boss had been brought to an end, swiftly followed by a club statement and the news that Duncan Ferguson will take temporary charge and be in the dugout at least for one game, maybe longer, let's see, starting with Chelsea tomorrow lunchtime. And so we're here to analyse, sift through the wreckage of Silva's reign, the decision, the crazy day that ultimately brought the decision and brought an end to his time at the club, and ask where next and who next. We'll start generally the manager, and I want to start with a couple of questions specifically to each of you on Marco Silva. Gav, first of all, was it the right decision to sack Marco Silva yesterday? we are recording.
On the balance of probabilities, yes. But I would not have been too upset if he'd come out on yesterday and said, we're giving Marco time.
I'll give you a much quicker answer. Yes, 100%. 53 league games I think he was in charge for. We've got a minus goal difference in that time. Just cast your mind back and just think of that 18-month reign. And I totally get, why managers need time, why you've got to try and be patient. You've got to be as, so patient as possible. And I was preaching that only 3 or 4 weeks ago. But cast your mind back, how many matches jump out in those 18 months as memorable games? I can think of one, the 4-0 against United. I'm struggling really to think of any others. I can't think of an identity, a definable shape that the team was committed to. And I just think that when you've had 18 months, you have spent money and you're in the bottom three, I think the board had to act quickly, and they did. So much as I liked Marco Silva as an individual, I think the decision was correct.
Adam?
Yeah, I think it was the right decision. I think, we were speaking before the derby that, if the defeat was bad enough, then the board's hand was forced essentially over Silva's future. And I think, after watching that, we all kind of knew. I think there was almost like an air of acceptance around Anfield after that, as everyone just thought, yeah, that's probably the last game that they're going to play for him. I said after the Leicester game that I did feel sorry for him, because I thought, it wasn't exactly his system that was to blame for that Leicester defeat. It was individual errors, but I think you can't be blaming bad luck for that Anfield defeat. I think that was more down to his choices, especially in terms of formation and how Everton started the game. I think that was crucial to the embarrassing way in which Everton did end up losing. And when the buck stopped with him for a performance like that, then he'd found it really difficult to survive that game.
You've got to start a derby match especially with intensity. Remember that old Joe Royle quote about, the midfield were tackling crisp packets that were blown across the pitch. You expect that in a derby. And Jurgen Klopp made his changes to his starting 11 that, you could argue weakened their side, but they maintained their intensity as a result of that. And for the first 15 minutes, they were flying around, sort of throwing, pressing tackles, you name it. We weren't. And that's got to come down to the manager. That disappointed me the most. I mean, the system was wrong, clearly, and he changed that as quickly as he could. But the intensity was lacking. It's a derby match, for God's sake. There needed to be a lot more intensity than we saw that night.
Okay, the second question specifically about Silva, and I was asked this before, and it stumped me a little bit. How will Marco Silva be remembered at Everton, amongst Evertonians?
I'm thinking back to last Plano was talking about Man United going down in '74, and Franco Farrell was the manager before Tommy Dockett had took him down. Franco Farrell joined in 71. 71 was it? Yeah, left in 72. And there was somebody said after his departure, said he came as a stranger and he left as a stranger. And I think there's a little bit of that in Marco. And that's not necessarily a criticism. It's just that's what I think he'll be remembered as, really.
Somebody that the supporters didn't really know.
No, yeah. And there's lots of reasons for that. When you're there for 18 months for a start, and we spoke about sometimes there's language difficulties and things like that on in earlier pods, and that was my first thought really, about why, you know, when you look back in 4 or 5 years' time, how he'll be remembered, you know. And it's strange for somebody who's obviously got natural warmth, from what I understand, but maybe that sometimes didn't come across, and I think that's maybe, well, as speaking as a supporter, perhaps I'll think about him.
Brennan?
That's a very fair summing up by Gav, that, yeah. We didn't know a great deal about him. I mean, I had the good fortune to sit down with him about 12 months or so ago, I think it was, and he came across very well, very, as you know, Phil, you know, he's a very decent man, he's a very nice guy to talk to, but every time I tried to push him on a little bit about himself, about, you know, his personal circumstances, about dealings with the fans, he gave absolutely nothing away. And I understand that people want to keep their private lives private, but you can do that and still give the fans a little bit of an insight into the kind of person you are. I mean, Roberto Martinez was very good at that. Obviously, he had lots of, you know, different faults, but, you know, he's talked about his L-shaped couch at home that he sat on one end and his missus sat on the other while he was watching Match of the Day, while his wife was watching soaps or something. And okay, it's all utterly meaningless in the grand scheme of things, but it just lets you think about that person as a human being, you know, rather than just this, you know, fairly expressionless character who sits in the dugout and, you know, sort of formulates tactics and shapes and things. And it helps, you know, when you're under pressure, as he was, people see the human being, the man behind that, and might be prepared to give you a little bit more time, or, you know, so be a little bit more patient before they jump to conclusions. We never really saw that. So, yeah, he's a man who we probably will remain anonymous, you know, so going forward, because we didn't really know a great deal about him. And as I mentioned earlier, not many of the matches under his charge were particularly, you know, memorable.
Art?
Yeah, I think it falls more onto his playing style, really. I think as a person, you know, he'll be remembered as the nice guy who finished last, really, yeah. Because, you know, I think he is, like, as we all know, he is a lovely person to, you know, talk to and, you know, talk football with, and you can tell he clearly loved working for Everton and he loves the game as well. But his team on the pitch, I think it's what you said before, Preno, they were lacking identity in the end. They were caught between wanting to be this, you know, solid defensive unit, but while wanting to play this expansive brand of quick attacking football. And I think we saw both sides of that in the Merseyside derby. You know, I think we played this defensive line, which was, you know, trying to keep Liverpool at bay, but we were trying to press them high at the same time, and it was just leaving 40, 50 yards of space in the middle of the pitch where they had 3 midfielders who were just absolutely running riot. So, yeah, unfortunately, so Silva will go down as, you know, a bit of an anonymous character in the, you know, in the grand annals of Everton's history, I'd argue.
We actually were prepared for a high pressing game from Liverpool, and, you know, I actually said in the last podcast, you know, we need to start knocking the ball long and play the ball, you know, in the third of the pitch. That's what Liverpool did. Yeah. They played long ball football on Wednesday and did it very, very successfully, and we couldn't handle it. Another very, very bad night at Anfield.
Yeah, I think the other phrase to use about Silva is hard done by.
Mm. Yeah, he had lots of misfortune throughout those 18 months with injuries and VAR decisions. And
as much as he picked Sigurdsson ahead of Schneiderlin, which he should never have done on Wednesday, he could point quite legitimately key moments this season. Yeah, he didn't have to look at a draw, and also he's lost 2-3 midfielders, and also, you know, probably for another discussion, but whether he got what he wanted off his director of football in the summer is probably a moot point in terms of the key positions in the team, and I think he could probably say now that, yeah, I've been sacked, but actually where the team is at the moment is not necessarily down to me completely as an individual. It goes down to the role as a coach in the modern game. The coach is just a piece of a jigsaw now in a football club, isn't it? It's not the Alex Ferguson, David Moyes type scenario. You are just one working part of a football club, and what goes on the pitch is a result of maybe 3-4 people, And
is that why?
I think he could say, yeah, I'm to blame, but I'm not totally to blame.
And this is kind of a moot point because ultimately it's probably semantics, but in terms of what it kind of indicates, do you think whoever comes in as the permanent replacement, and I know he's already in the club statement been referred to the next manager, do we actually have to appoint a head coach and absolve the extra responsibilities that come with being a manager almost, or alleviate, some of that sort of, I wouldn't say influence, but you know what I mean, and actually have Marcel Brands almost fully in control of football matters?
Well, I'm a big believer in a manager has to manage. A manager has to be omnipotent at a football club. He makes the decisions. The director of football can create a strategy and can create an overall, sort of business plan, if you like, which is what Marcel Brands has done very successfully. But the buck stops at the manager's desk, therefore he should make the decisions. If he wanted Mario Mandzukic, so in the summer, which we're told, so he did, even though he's 33. So what? Go ahead and get him. And we've said it millions of times. We've suffered so much through not having a centre forward replacement for Romelu Lukaku. Moyes Keane might become that replacement in time, but he isn't at the moment. Therefore, that was a wrong decision. But I think that the manager has to have the overall responsibility, for transfers. You argue about it, you should sit down with, the director of football and argue why it's so vital that he needs a particular player, and he should get his way in the end. It's the old Brian Clough argument, isn't it? We discuss it amongst ourselves, we pitch it about, and then we decide I was right all along. Because he's the guy that's going to get the sack, not the director of football.
Any team in the bottom 3 out of 15 games of a season, of course, has to have their eyes open. But do you think generally, the situation, how things have unfolded, and where we are, and changing manager again, do you think that we all have to reassess our expectations for the next remainder of this season and the season after that, maybe even for a couple of years? Do you think we've been, and I'm just sort of thinking out loud, do you think we've been overly unrealistic to think we could finish 6th this season? Have the realities of a squad rebuild, young players, etc., things that you talked about there, Gav, maybe a director of football not being able to, or not giving the coach and the manager exactly what he thinks the squad needs. Does that mean that we need to think we just need
that was one of the reasons why I said I wouldn't have been unhappy if they said Silva would have stayed, to be honest with you. I don't think the unreasonable expectations are 6 this season.
Okay.
Look who's there start. Sheffield United, Crystal Palace.
Yeah, because we all knew that there was some of the bigger clubs are going to struggle, or the historical. So I don't think 6th by any stretch of the imagination. And it'd be interesting to see what 6 gets in terms of points this season. I mean, you could end up getting 6 with 60.
Well, I mean,
60 to 60.
Everton at this stage are only 7 points off 6th.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. Have we, again, just thinking out loud, have we overestimated the squad?
I think the problem is all the pieces are there. It's just that Everton haven't been able to put them together yet. So all the fans have these expectations because they can see all the pieces are there. We've got some incredibly talented players in that squad. We had a manager who had turned the team round and got them playing some really nice football towards the end of last season. Another strong summer behind them. All the pieces were in place. It was just, for one reason or another, injuries, not getting a striker in this, not getting a first team striker in the summer, not getting that centre back replacement for Kurt Zouma. All those problems have ended up building up to the position we are now. But I think the expectations were right.
I think that's right. I see what. Are you getting an earful that actually overestimating the balance of the squad is probably more of a worrying question.
Deeper but not stronger.
That what Adam was saying there is, we've got some good players, but actually it's not what we've got, it's what we're missing is the issue.
And what we may have in 18 months, 2 years when the players in that squad are
or not. And I think you're right there. It was quite obvious in the summer, and we said it a zillion times, is not having a full centre half is going to cost us at some point during the season, and it has done.
Yeah.
And that is not being helped by the fact that we've not had first choice midfield, or even our second choice midfield, some would say. And also the fact that when you saw our results in pre-season, we were obviously going to have trouble scoring goals.
I know. I did reflect on pre-season the other day, and obviously understandably people are right when they say you take pre-season with a pinch of salt, etc., etc. But the big issue in pre-season has been one of the big issues.
Yeah. And it's quite obvious last season, even at the end, that we relied on two players to score goals for us, Sigurdsson and Richarlison.
Yeah.
And if one or both of them stop scoring, then that makes that even worse. And Siggy's got 1 goal this season, has he, something like that? And so that's why we've got, was it 15 goals from 16 games or something?
Quite alarming stat that I was told last night, because obviously we were at the game on Wednesday and didn't get to see it, but a 15-minute period where
Sigurdsson didn't touch the ball.
Yeah,
but that's because of the way he's playing on the pitch. I mean, using the second Brian Clough quote of the of the podcast, Brian Clough's one of his quotes is that the biggest sin in football was giving somebody a job on the pitch that they can't do or haven't got the tools to do. And I think you can criticise Silva quite legitimately for playing somebody, as we said on like Tuesday, he's a sort of 9.5, isn't he, on the pitch, half centre forward, half number 10, playing him like as a sort of holding midfield player or
to
whatever.
Not touch the ball there.
I get that, but part of that is you understanding your role and where to receive the ball and all that. I'm just talking about Sigurdsson's performance in general, of which you can throw that stat on him. But when I first heard that stat, I just thought, well, that's because you play for the start. One of the things doesn't absolve him from blame. But one of the things in that is actually he's a centre forward. Effectively, he's playing holding midfielder. Yeah,
it's almost like the Nick Barmby situation all over again. He was a club record transfer fee when Everton bought him, and no one knew where the hell he was going to play.
Yeah.
And it was only ultimately where Walter Smith found a role for him on the left of midfield, which nobody had expected at all. Yeah. They suddenly got him his recall to the England squad and his admiring glances from across the park. Yeah. Sigurdsson, is a number 10. But the system in which we play at the moment, 4-2-3-1, is it ideally suited for that? I don't know. You've got to build a team around him, and we can't really do that at the moment.
Yeah.
And so it's another square peg in a round hole, and it's not worked.
Yeah, but that's the point, isn't it? It's when we say, quite right, we've got some talented players, but have we got talented players that can fit into the system? And he'd be one of them.
Okay, we slightly deviated with a bit of a Sigurdsson analysis there, but if the panel today have said Silva will be remembered as somebody that we didn't know, or fans did not have an opportunity or were able to relate to, his temporary replacement, Duncan Ferguson, is somebody we know more about. What type of man on a touchline, what type of manager do we think he will be on Saturday?
I have to say, I'm being completely honest here, I'm a little underwhelmed by the appointment. Again, because we don't know a great deal about his qualifications as a coach. He's been there quite a long time, but clearly, he famously doesn't give many media interviews, so we don't know a great deal about so what he does, what his capabilities are. We know he will rouse the crowd on Saturday because so quite rightly he's very celebrated by the Gladys Street end. They love the fella, so that's a positive. It will get the crowd on side. Because the last home match was a very a negative crowd experience. Indeed. So that's a plus, but quite what he brings in terms of coaching acumen and technical acumen, I genuinely don't know. Seeing a couple of guys from the youth academy, Franny Jeffers and John Ebel alongside him, lovely fellas though they are, also raises my eyebrows a little bit. But it's a temporary appointment, isn't it? I'm surprised that David Unsworth wasn't asked again, and I know. People will say, well, it's the third time, so why would you go back there again? But it's a safe pair of hands. He did it successfully against Norwich with Joe Royle. He ended his last spell successfully against West Ham, even though Sam Allardyce tried to claim the credit. But so he did, an okay job in the circumstances. And we know he could do it again. So I'm a little bit surprised that so they decided to go elsewhere for the caretaker management, but we'll see. So the evidence will be out there on Saturday. It's a harsh, unforgiving environment, the Premier League, and we'll understand very, very quickly. So how good or otherwise Duncan is.
It's temporary, but how long do we think realistically he will be in the dugout? Do you think he will still be temporary, in brackets, but manager of Everton Football Club? by the time we play the quarter-final against Leicester. Now, I'm saying that because Arsenal have had Freddie Ljungberg in charge for 2 games. The third game's this weekend. If we have Duncan in charge for 3 games, I think that takes us to the quarters, doesn't it?
I hope it's not the case. I hope that, I don't want Everton to rush this managerial search by any stretch, but it's not as if this Silva sacking has come out of the blue. He was under intense pressure before that Merseyside derby. Like, I'd have liked to have thought that discussions were at least made to try and identify somebody who could be the man to come in next, even before Silva was sacked. And now that it's happened, it's still a good week, over a week until we play Manchester United. I would hope that's enough time to interview a few candidates and get somebody in place, because Ljungberg has had this will be his 3rd game this weekend, but that was that's only in the space of a week as well. So yeah, I really obviously I'm speaking before we've seen how much Ferguson might motivate the squad, etc. But yeah, I'm hoping we have a permanent replacement in fairly quickly.
Depends on results, doesn't it? I mean, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was a caretaker manager who got the job permanently because he went on this ridiculous run of victories. If Duncan Ferguson, can put together 3 victories in the quick succession, that buys the board a bit of time. They don't need to make a quick decision. They can wait until other candidates become available. It's a results business, so obviously if they lose the next 3, it becomes absolutely imperative that a permanent manager is found and appointed very, very quickly.
Yeah,
but Gav, so I was just going to say, fingers crossed Duncan can get a reaction and we can pick up some points, etc. But there's a very distinct possibility that we will still be in the wrong part of the table, maybe still in the bottom 3 So the manager that the football club are going to have to appoint not only has to be the manager for the long term, the manager for who the club believe can take the club forward, but he also has to hit the ground running. He also has to be able to get a reaction out of players to potentially pull the club out of the mess.
Yeah.
Who is that? I mean, that is because that's almost like you're almost having to amalgamate the and inverted commas qualities of a firefighter a la Big Sam and somebody who's progressive, forward thinking, got strong identities in a more positive way. Who is that man? He's a super manager.
I'm trying to think of how to answer that.
I'm not saying you've got to come out with the name, but this is the thing that I'm thinking. How have we got to a situation where we're having to find a manager who can do all of that?
There's a couple of things there. There's the firefighting bit. I'm not so sure about, because Adam said, what are we, 7 points?
7 points.
So we're not cut adrift from the rest of the Premier League at this stage.
Like a bottom 3 team.
But that's because you set them up wrong, But we actually didn't defend like that at Leicester, did we?
Fair enough, yeah.
So that's the first thing I'd say. So in some respects, I don't think we're as bad in the baddest position as what people are saying. So I don't think we're in firefighting. The concern I've got is for Ferguson on Saturday is that thing about getting the players playing. Well, I think the players have been playing, so I'm not anticipating a massively different performance on Saturday compared to what we've been playing like for about the last 4 or 5 weeks. It's not as if when Mourinho got sacked, or even when Koeman got sacked, that actually the team was broken and they weren't playing for the manager, etc. So anybody new coming in was going to get you spoke. I think you said reaction was the phrase. There. I don't think. I'm not expecting a massive reaction because I'm not saying that the players weren't playing for Silva and that actually from what we've heard is they actually liked them and like working with them. That's my concern for Duncan on Saturday, and if he's playing, if he has a couple of games, I'm not going to necessarily see a massive change in the players. I think what he's got an opportunity to do is set the team up better than what Marco did on Wednesday. And I think the challenge for the manager coming in is just to set the team up a little bit better. But he's got limited options with no midfield and, well, let's face it, no goal scorer, and also limited options at the back. But I think there's something workable there for a new manager coming. I'm not
Yeah.
But going back, we've not answered your question before about like what's the longer term assessment. I think we do have to reassess what we want to do longer term. You won't have the money, will we, for the start?
Well, yeah, and it's what type of manager do we want?
Yeah.
You know, what road do we go down?
I mean, hopefully appointing a new manager before the next set of accounts are produced.
well, indeed.
I would argue the appointment of Ferguson isn't necessarily to get a reaction from the players. I'd say it's to get a reaction from the Goodison Park crowd.
Yeah.
For this, nobody they could have brought in will get a bigger reaction from the crowd at Goodison than Duncan Ferguson for this Chelsea game. And after what we said about the last game against Norwich, after how toxic that atmosphere ended up going, they needed a massively different response. Duncan Ferguson's going to walk onto the side of the pitch. Everyone's going to be singing his name. Instantly, the crowd are going to be up for it behind them for a big game against Chelsea. It's exactly what happened against Chelsea last season, and we ended up beating them 2-0. I feel like the crowd really got behind the team on that occasion and really pushed them towards that victory. I wouldn't bet against that the same happening again this time.
No, it's a good shout because it's an early kick-off as well, 12:30, which are notoriously flat atmospheres. So his presence on the touchline will hopefully counter that quite significantly.
In the immediate aftermath of Wednesday's defeat at Anfield, word was coming through to ourselves and other national newspaper reporters that the feeling was that obviously Silva was on the brink, which turned out to be correct. But what hasn't materialised in the shifting sands of a crazy Thursday, the prospects of David Moyes coming into the football club appear to have dwindled because the opportunity looked like it would have been on a temporary interim basis. That void looks now to have been filled by Duncan Ferguson. Is that the right thing to have happened? Have we missed an opportunity? Should we have gone with Moyes and maybe a Tim Cahill combination till the end of the season, or is it right to have just got a temporary solution in Duncan or whoever that would have been, somebody else, and then gone out for a permanent manager, somebody who's obviously different to Moyes? What are our thoughts on what looks like no return for Moyes?
Well, results will dictate whether that was the right decision or not. I mean, personally, I think a David Moyes interim appointment with Tim Cahill would have been good for the football club. I know that doesn't hold universal support amongst the Everton support base, but you're talking about the Everton managers, what they've had to inherit over the last 2 or 3 years, and why expectations need to be diminished. Roberto Martinez was left with an absolutely rock solid Everton foundation to build upon by Moyes when he left, and they were playing very decent football as well last season when he left. The experiences he's had after he's left Goodison Park have been mixed. So you can argue he was harshly, sort of treated at Manchester United. He had a mixed experience in Spain, dreadful in Sunderland, but then everyone's dreadful at Sunderland. But then he had a very, very good experience at West Ham, took them out of the bottom 3 and finished the season 13th. So I think he would have been a good interim appointment. I certainly wouldn't advocate him, sort of being, coming back to the club permanently, sort of long term. But I had absolutely no qualms or no issues with that. I had arguments with people in my own family about it, people telling me that he was a dinosaur and it would be a retrograde step. And I say, well, no, not in the short term. I disagree. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen now anyway, so it's a moot point. It doesn't really matter. But if he had been brought in short term, I wouldn't have had any qualms about that.
What do we make of the decision as it appears? Because obviously the prospect of Moyes until the end of the season as interim looked like it would be on the proviso to steady the ship, get the team out of trouble, but then buy the club a significant amount of time to go out and find the right man. But it seems now that that's not happened. And so the time frame seems to have shrunk to go and find the right man.
I wouldn't rule the rules. I wouldn't rule Moyes out.
Okay.
Interim between the end of the season.
Even though the club's statement specifically said permanent manager, is an interim permanent?
Yeah, but things change, don't they?
Things change.
Like we had Unsworth in, didn't we, in 2017, and we tried to get a permanent manager. I wonder if that was then. And we ended up going to Allardyce then, who was only ever going to be an interim manager. So I wouldn't necessarily rule out it's the worst case scenario maybe, but I wouldn't say that's a completely gone thing. That depends on how you go by with getting a permanent manager. So I certainly wouldn't rule that out at this stage. For Moyes between now and the end of the season, to be honest with you. I'd say it's the last case scenario, but I don't think it's something that's got like a 0% chance of happening.
In general, I just don't like the concept of bringing someone in with the proviso that he's only going to stay until the end of the season, because I think you're starting on the back foot, really, aren't you? Like, in terms of just like how much the players are going to respect you. Like, if the players are just 100%. Thinking, well, you're going to be gone at the end of the season regardless, then like, I feel like you've got to do something quite exceptional in the first few weeks of your reign, maybe, to make them think, all right, I will play for this man, etc.
Even if, I'm speaking hypothetically, even if everybody's cards were on the table, not like Sam's situation, which was very fuzzy, even though we all thought, he can't last, but he's still an 18-month contract. Even if, though, say Moyes came in and it was clear, it was made in black and white, David Moyes is here till the end of the season. We all know where we stand. Together, we've got to sort this out. Is that not a healthier way of? Yeah. I'm just thinking out loud again.
I can't see Moyes taking it on that basis.
Well,
though.
That's another point.
Yeah, and he'll have his West Ham experience in the back of his mind there. I think the other thing as well is, for the longer term at Moyes, Planout talked about it, management, isn't it? Who's a managing director of football? Moyes did everything, didn't he, at Everton? Yeah.
But
could he work with Marcel?
On an interim basis, he would have to.
He would have to, but in a longer term basis, it doesn't strike me as one of football's natural partnerships. To be honest with you,
it's a very, very tough balancing act, trying to get a director of football manager partnership to work well. Tottenham tried it so many times and failed miserably. Liverpool struggled for a long time to do it until the Michael Edwards, Jurgen Klopp axis so finally seemed to strike gold. It does take a lot of working out, and it can be a very precarious thing to get right. And you could argue at the moment we haven't got that balance quite right.
Yeah, it depends what the director of football, your role can be several different things, can't it? I would imagine the Michael Edwards role was completely different to the Marcel Brands role, isn't it? And I think that's the thing that Moyes, that's the thing that goes against him in any sort of permanent role. Interim, you could live with it, but even as an interim, maybe thinking, I'm not so sure.
Have anybody got any preference? Is there a manager out there that as a permanent proposition you would like?
Yeah, Tottenham have got him. No, we've put these names to people at the football club, and Jose Mourinho was never going to be considered because of the antagonism so he brings to the dugout. Also told that Rafa Benitez would never be considered so for similar reasons, but beyond that it's a fairly blank canvas. And Farhad Moshiri will make the decision. He decides who he wants. Latest name we're hearing is Vitor Pereira, who I have to say I know very little about. And that just strikes me as being another Marco Silva, a manager who's been in charge of Olympiacos and Porto and had sort of success there. Well, isn't that exactly what Marco did? And is that significantly different? There are sort of high-level managers out there. Ancelotti, so who you could argue is a bit long in the tooth, but so a proven operator. Is it Allegri, the guy from Juventus? There's there are names out there. But
they're all different.
Yeah, they're all very, very different, and I get the impression that they don't really know who they want at the moment. I don't think that there's an absolutely overwhelming candidate out there. I mean, reading today that Arsenal have got a short list, 12 names, which they're hoping to whittle down then into a short list in the next week or so, and then sort of identify the candidate they want.
Just to jump in there, I'll ask you this: are we competing with Arsenal for a manager, or financially are we on different planes?
We should be competing with Arsenal, but we're probably not, because they've got the appeal of the capital, European football, so arguably, so more funds. So Pochettino might have been a manager that Arsenal could have targeted, but for the fact that he managed, their fiercest rivals. Everton, clearly have investigated the possibility of Pochettino, but for the reasons we've just identified, it probably isn't a realistic option, because of location, because of lack of European football, because of funds. We're probably not competing with Arsenal, and that's desperately disappointing.
Yeah, I think we've got to be realistic in this sort of scenario, because let's face it, a few months ago Arsenal were in a European final.
Yeah,
they
and sacked the manager that got them there.
Yeah, they're however many points above us, and their season has still been so bad that they've sacked the manager already. I think
5 points above us, are they?
Yeah, I think their ambitions are a little bit different to Everton's as things stand. I think Everton's long-term aim should be to be challenging Arsenal and then pushing ahead of Arsenal. But in terms of the here and now, I think Arsenal's ambitions are a little bit different than Everton's.
Yeah, if you're a manager, the first thing you look at when you go to a club is what's your turnover a year and how much we'll have to spend. And the two things are interlinked, aren't they? So Arsenal's turnover is 500 million a year, isn't it? 400 million a year. Ours is 200. Liverpool's is it's 550 now, isn't it? Whatever. Spurs about 500 million. Clubs that are 2.5 times bigger than Everton. So if you're a manager, the first thing you've got to look at is those numbers, because that's going to drive you how much you can pay players' wages, and it's going to dictate out what players can go to the club. Which is part of our problem the last 3 or 4 years. And so Arsenal is a completely different level playing field for us, and that dictates what manager you would get. So I think,
and any prospective manager would obviously, the prospect of managing Everton in the Premier League is hugely attractive. But as you say, Gav, it's no secret. In fact, it's open and been talked about. We're slashing wage bills, we're reducing squad
absolutely.
size. The direction is buy young and cheaper and develop and progress players who will then probably be sold on, and we start getting slowly. So
that's going. What we're selling to a manager now is completely different to what we were selling to when Koeman came in 2016,
and we're paying them differently. I think Silva was on effectively half as much money.
Yeah, so we are looking for a different type of manager. Ironically, somebody like David Moyes 2002 wouldn't be. That one who could identify young talent and then blend them in the first team and make them international players and then sell on for a decent fee. That's exactly where we are at the moment.
Well, football's changed now, hasn't it? Because back then, that appointment was embraced by Everton supporters. Okay, we're in a fairly precarious position in the Premier League, but a voracious, hungry, so young manager from the Championship was warmly embraced. I don't think it would be nowadays.
No.
So people want this, sort of fashionable, sort of foreign coach. If you look at I mean, somebody like Bielsa would be great, somebody like that. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But, if I'm just trying to think of a hungry young coach, Chris Wilder type, from the Championship.
Yeah.
If Everton identified somebody like that, I suspect supporters wouldn't be particularly,
exactly.
passionate.
Well, you know what I'm saying?
Somebody,
but that sort of skill set Moyes had. Not saying somebody from the Championship, but that manager with that skill set, and they're very few and far between.
Sorry, Gav. Do they have to have Premier League experience?
Yeah, for the scenario that Everton find themselves in now, yeah.
So if the club think that way, then that narrows the search again further, because all the names, or certainly a vast number of the names that have filled the vacuum today, and as Preno alludes to, it would suggest that these are just names being pushed forward and into the sort of the media sphere, as people have said, well, he's available, he'd be interested, he might be interested. How many of them have actually got Premier League experience? Less than half, probably.
Yeah.
How important is that they've managed in the Premier League? Because Marcelo's spoken about players and paying certain amounts of money, or only being willing to pay to a certain level if these players have not played in England before. And obviously the premium of Premier League experience changes the goalposts. It has to apply to the managers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To
a degree. I think if you've got a track record elsewhere, that's, he's never managed the Premier League, has he? But he's got a track record,
But then that's obviously that. Yeah, then we're talking about managers we could not.
No, you know what I mean.
I'm just saying.
What I'm saying is it doesn't.
But this is the problem.
Yeah, and it's few and far between, isn't it? Really, and that's why there's been millions of names bandied about, hasn't it? Really, you could go on.
Old, young, Premier League experience, no Premier League experience, attacking, defend.
This is a problem that we've had so many times before, though, isn't it? I don't think that I wouldn't have said Marco Silva was a standout candidate among the majority of supporters. Don't think Ronald Koeman was the standout candidate. Martinez might have had a little bit more support, but I wouldn't exactly say like he was the absolute one that everybody wanted. Like there's still an identity problem at Everton that we don't quite know. It was as we've all said before, we're stuck in between the kind of what we need right now and what we'll need for the long term to get us playing the right sort of football, and it just becomes so hard to find. As Phil said there, it becomes so hard to find a manager who can get all of these qualities in one man.
I think the names you've mentioned there, I mean, Koeman is the one that jumps out. I think he was pretty much universally embraced because he'd done such a good job at Southampton, and there was a lot of clamour for his services at the time, and it was seen as a bit of a coup when Everton sort of secured him. But you could argue, whether they acted too hastily in dispensing with his services at the start of that season, where they had a really, really, really tough fixture list to try and contend with. And the problem then was clearly the situation at the club was bizarre. With the director of football who he couldn't bear, sort of trying to work with him. But no, it's almost impossible to get a name that everybody is going to get universally behind. And,
but then isn't that kind of why the club, and we hope and we assume that they have, a very, very specific and very focused on the list of criteria for the manager they want, and whether this person is known to Evertonians or we've never heard of him, if he ticks the boxes, then go for him.
Yeah, I tell you what I think about it. I'm not saying he should manage Everton, but I think the manager at the moment, I think who could really do a good job for a big club down the line is the fella at Brighton.
Potter.
Yeah, I think he's a really good manager. I watched him on Saturday at Anfield, and last night two really big games and away from home, and maybe could have scrambled the points at Anfield, and they won last night.
Got lucky against us, Gav.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. But no, I'm saying he shouldn't be the next Everton manager. But there are people out there who eventually, I think, could manage, big clubs.
But then, and I totally take that point. But for us, appointing somebody like that would be it's a gamble.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's Farhad Mashiri minded to make a gamble.
And is he fashionable enough? So
that's it. Yeah.
But then this all comes back to who ultimately will put the names on the table for the board of directors to sign off or not, or say no to. Yeah, and if it's Marcel, then you can foresee a gamble almost. If you and take in inverted commas, I mean, he would have no problem delivering names that nobody's heard of if he thinks they're the right people.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was saying before. That's why I wouldn't rule Moyes out or somebody out between now and the end of the season, because I'm not sure whether we can do. That conversation we had, and like, are we confident that somebody could deliver against them requirements in the next 10 days?
Difficult.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't ask us to do predictions, please.
We'll get this again, isn't it?
I forgot about
Sorry,
that.
Preno. Preno may be my boss, but I will overrule him on this one. We will do predictions. It's customary. We have to. There is a game to look forward to tomorrow back at Goodison. Adam, what's your prediction for Everton versus Chelsea?
I think Duncan Ferguson's going to get the Goodison crowd up for it.
He's going to get the winner.
He'll put himself up front. Get the tattoo out.
Through ball by Everton.
2-1 to Everton.
You've always got to be positive, haven't you? You've got to be optimistic. I'll go for a home win. Clean sheet, 1-0. Just absolutely raucous, ridiculous atmosphere. A goal in the first 15 minutes, and then park the bus for 75 minutes and get that result.
What did they say? 1-1 on here.
Did you all
say 1-1? Did he for the derby?
At no point was it
1-1. Probably the first time, like the pre-match predictions were all being wrong by the 12th minute or whatever it was. I don't think we'll win on Saturday. I think it'll be a tough game, and I think we'll be lucky to escape as well. So 1-1 is a natural default. When in doubt, always go for 1-1.
Yeah, I think we will get something. I'm not sure we'll get the win, but I think we will come away with something. And as the chaps have said, Goodison should be in full voice, which will play a huge part. Thank you very much for your company and your insight and opinion. Excellent as always. And thank you very much for listening. This has been the Royal Blue Podcast.